Good afternoon to those of you who are joining now the seminar. Let us give a minute for the rest of the attendees to join the session, and then we will get started. Okay, so welcome you all to this session titled Opportunities and Challenges to Advancing Gender Equality Through Global Trade, organized on the occasion of World Standards Day 2022. My name is Rebecca Gallardo, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all on behalf of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Before I introduce our distinguished speakers, allow me to briefly remark upon the subject of today's session. So today we are celebrating, as you know, World Standards Day 2022. And the theme of this year's celebration is Shared Vision for a Better World, which talks about the importance of the collaborative effort that entails standardization to attain the Sustainable Development Goals. UNIDO works closely with many international partners, such as ISO, the UNFSS, or the Global Compact, to build a shared vision and contribute towards common objectives guided by the 2030 Agenda. Over the year, standards have evolved to address the key components of the Sustainable Development Agenda, including not only economic considerations, but also the environmental and social dimensions in the so-called triple bottom line approach. They have become instrumental in the achievement of most SDGs, including SDG 9 on the industry, but also SDG 3 on health, SDG 8 on decent work, or SDG 13 on climate action, just to name a few. And of course, SDG 5 on gender equality is no exception. Women constitute approximately half of the world population, and yet no country has fully achieved gender equality today. For instance, many occupations in industry tend to be predominated by one gender, which often results in women and men having different knowledge, different skills, and even different opportunities. We are still underrepresented in managerial positions and have fewer opportunities to participate in decision-making and in consensus-building processes such as standard setting. But targeting gender equality and women's empowerment is not only the right thing to do, it is also the clever thing to do, because economies grow faster when gender equality is advanced, less people remain in poverty, and overall well-being increases. Trade in particular can enlarge women's role in the economy by creating new jobs in the formal economy and in sectors traditionally dominated by men, by increasing women's bargaining power, and by expanding their access to skills and to education. UNIDO global initiatives like the Global Quality and Standards Program have a key role to play in lifting the barriers that hold women back so they can, or we can, engage in global trade under fair terms and reap positive economic outcomes. So it is in this context that we have convened this session to explore the gender dimension in global trade and how quality infrastructure, including gender responsive standards, can support women's role in the economy and trade, ultimately contributing to attaining the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I have to say that today also marks the launch of a new publication titled Advancing Gender Equality Through Global Trade. This publication is now available both in English and in Spanish, and it's publicly accessible. So if you haven't done it so yet, I encourage you to download it from our knowledge hub, hub.unido.org. We're gonna paste the direct link to the publication in the chat box. And now, before we get ourselves immersed in the discussion, let us break the ice with a poll for our audience. So let's see how much you know about gender equality. Okay, let's go with the first question that says, during the development of the Quality Infrastructure for Sustainable Development Index, UNIDO and ISO launched a survey that asked 92 countries about their national policies related to QI. What do you think was the share of countries that had considered gender equality in their quality policy? So was it 5% of the surveyed countries? Was it 90% of the surveyed countries? Was it 31% or 54%? So while answers come in, let me take this occasion to invite all of you to visit the website of the Quality Infrastructure for Sustainable Development Index if you want to know how fit for purpose your national quality infrastructure system is to contribute to the SDGs. We're gonna again paste the link, the direct link to the QI for Sustainable Development Index website in the chat box. Okay, I see that answers are coming in. I'm gonna give 10 additional seconds for those of you who are still indecisive. Okay. Okay, so I think I'm gonna close the poll now. That's it, last seconds. Okay, that's it. So here are the results. This is what you think. You think that the majority of you chose 90% of the surveyed countries, and that is actually the correct answer. So less than a fifth of the surveyed countries have actually considered gender equality in their quality policy, which means that there is still a lot of room for improvement. Okay, let's go to the second question of our poll now that says, according to the World Bank, women are the sole or the majority owners of less than 15% of businesses globally. Which of these regions do you think has the higher share of firms with a majority of female ownership? So is it East Asia and the Pacific? Is it Europe and Central Asia, Latin America and the Caribbean, Middle East and North Africa, or is it the Sub-Saharan Africa region? You can start voting now for the region that you think has the highest share of firms with a majority of female ownerships. So where are those female entrepreneurs? In which region? Okay, I see the answers coming in. Don't be shy. Tell us what you think. I'll give you an additional 15 seconds to answer the question. Oh, I see there is a lot of diversity here. Okay. Good. 3, 2, 1, and that's it. Okay. So here are the results. So as you can see, there was a lot of people who voted for Europe and Central Asia, but that is not the correct answer. The correct answer is East Asia and the Pacific, in which 25.6%, so a bit over 1/4 of firms, have a majority of female ownership. I have to say that unfortunately, only 2 out of all these regions are above the global average, which, as you remember, was 15%. And those regions are East Asia and the Pacific, as I said, and Latin America and the Caribbean, which has a share close to 20%. Surprisingly, this is one of the regions that received the least votes. Okay, let me stop the poll there. Okay. And now, without further delay, I would like to introduce the wonderful panel of experts that are about to share with us their insights and their experience in promoting gender equality through global trade. So let us give a warm welcome to Ms. Simone Heberly, Deputy Head of Mission and Head of Cooperation at the Embassy of Switzerland in Ghana, Togo, and Benin. Until recently, she worked as the deputy head of section at SECO for countries and global portfolio. Simone has more than 10 years of experience in international cooperation, including in Africa and Central Asia. We are also delighted to have with us Ms. Nino Manuelitz, National Technical Advisor of the GQSP Georgia and representative of the advisory board of the Georgian Laboratory Association. Nino actually wears many hats. She heads the technical committee for quality and management of the Georgian National Agency for Standards and Metrology, and is a technical assessor of the Georgian Accreditation Center, among others. A pleasure to welcome also Mr. Ricardo Paredes Castro, Chief Technical Advisor of the GQSP project in Peru. Ricardo has been a senior consultant on public policy and administration and production development for almost 10 years and has a wealth of experience in different value chains. He was also the WTO coordinator at the Vice Ministry of Foreign Trade of Peru. And last but certainly not least, our dear colleague, Ms. Carmen Sugar, gender expert at UNIDO. She has more than 10 years of experience with international organizations. She was a gender and law specialist at the International Development Law Organization. And she also held various specialist level positions at UN Women with program management, coordination, and partnerships responsibilities. So finally, just a couple of general housekeeping rules from my side before I pass the floor to my colleague Ebe. To our distinguished speakers, I kindly remind you again to please mute yourself when you are not intervening to avoid background noises. And to our audience, please use the Q&A function to leave your questions. If due to time constraints, we cannot address those questions during the actual session, we will make sure that we reply to you via email. Moreover, please note that the session will be recorded, so you will be able to view it again, or even better, to share the link with the many colleagues I'm sure you have interested in this very important topic. We will post the recording on our Knowledge Hub, so again, hub.unido.org. And with that, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Ebe Muschiali, who will moderate the panel discussion. Ebe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for the introduction, for passing me the floor. And thank you also for this ice-breaking poll, which clearly demonstrates the importance of promoting gender equality and empowerment of women, not only in developing countries, which is our daily work, but clearly also in Europe. There is much to do still. My name is Ebe Muschiali. I'm industrial development expert in UNIDO headquarters, and I've been working in supporting SMEs and quality related projects for the past almost 20 years. And it is my pleasure really to welcome you today to this webinar that allows us to get together, although virtually, for this important day and for this important occasion, which is to celebrate the 2020 World Standards Day. We all agree on the important and strategic role that standards play in our daily life. And today is then the perfect occasion to reflect on how UNIDO and SECO have been cooperating so far for advancing gender equality through global trade, and on how the GQSP program, the Global Quality and Standards Program, has been intervening in more than 12 countries worldwide to boost the competitiveness of several value chains. I think it's the right day to discuss how the program interventions can continue fostering gender equality at the macro, at the meso, and at the micro level. And for this, it's a pleasure to be with such a nice panel from all over the world and tackling standards and quality from different angles and different perspectives. I would like to start exchanging with the first question that would go to Nino, Ms. Nino Manuelitz, who is the GQSP National Technical Advisor in Georgia in the Caucasus region. Hi, Nino, and welcome to this roundtable. As we have seen with the first question of the poll that Rebecca kindly proposed us, QI-related policy often fails to adequately incorporate gender considerations. What do you think could be done to ensure that quality policy is conducive to gender equality and that the gender principles are applied to shape the reality of the QI institutions and service providers? Over to you, Nino.
Thank you, Ebram. Thank you. I'm glad to meet you, everybody here. So it's a very important question, and I think it's important not only in Georgia, also in other countries, but I will tell you regarding what happens in Georgia regarding these issues. Very shortly, I would like to introduce you about Georgia situation, gender equality in Georgia. It's maybe it is not known for everybody. In 12th century, we had golden era in Georgia, and we have very famous poem at night in the partner's skin, and there's written that lions or wolves are equally lions, so female or male they are. And accordingly, so in 100 years ago, when we had the first parliament, we had many Georgian ladies, women in the parliament, when it was impossible for other countries. During the Soviet period in Georgia, everything was changed, and unfortunately, Georgian women have not such important positions on different different scopes, and also in quality infrastructure scope. And what is should be mentioned that in today's Georgian, despite that the Georgian national legal framework reflects the basic principles of gender equality and is in line with international requirements and commitments, sadly that reality is different because the Georgian, so of course Georgian women have jobs, they work, but on the management positions, they are mostly men. And according, so in our experience during the GQSP project, we have identified that Georgian women who are educated or in this quality infrastructure and conformity assessment scopes in laboratory standardization and so on, and especially in laboratory business, they have successfully progressed their career. They became owners of private laboratories. And again, I can mention that education is more important part to solve these problems and to step over this barrier. And more education to equip women with the skills and conditions they need to be professional development. It is very important. And to all of this, I would like to add that it's important to build cross-sector partnerships between organizations who are focused on women improvement, and it's also very important, and we have to raise and integrate these gender issues into national policies and plans, include women's voice to shape new solutions and new politics. And so my answer is that to solve this problem is again education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nino, for your intervention, for explaining us how the situation is in Georgia, and also for this interesting description of how education and how empowering women through education can really change also the quality infrastructure system in the country. And we have seen it in Georgia with many women setting up private laboratories, and today contributing very actively to advocating for better testing facilities and better systems that ensure better quality for the country. Thank you very much. The second question would go to UNIDO, to my colleague Carmen Schubert, who's gender expert in UNIDO Vienna. Hi, Carmen. For UNIDO, gender and the empowerment of women is at the heart of our mandate of promoting inclusive and sustainable industrial development, ISID. And UNIDO aims at creating equal opportunities for men and women thus contributing also to the achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals and related SDGs, SDG 9, but SDG 5 is for sure the more prominent one when we talk about gender equality. Today, we celebrate the World Standards Day, and this day is extremely important for all the projects and colleagues in-house and in the field that are dealing with supporting and promoting standards and quality. And there are many of us working on this topic. What are, in your opinion, and from the Gender Office perspective, the challenges and opportunities to boost the adoption of gender responsive standards? And how can we really ensure that gender is placed in the mainstream of technical cooperation activities, particularly in regard to trade capacity building and private sector development? Over to you, Carmen.
Thank you very much, Eve. And to add, as regards the main challenges, or the main challenge which also to me constitutes a main opportunity, is really the systematic inclusion of gender considerations when we are developing standards, and also when we are implementing them and supporting countries in ensuring that they are abided by. So it's this systematical inclusion and the consideration of gender issues from the onset that is sometimes a bit challenging. It's rather due to the knowledge as regards to how. And this is also, I think, very well exemplified by the question that was posed at the beginning, where we saw that only 1 in 5 quality policies or quality infrastructure policies have a gender angle. And in this regard, so what do we do? What can we do to ensure that we consider women both as a vulnerable population, but also as agents of change in these processes? I mean, there are 3 main entry points. On the one side, we have the process of the standard development itself. Then we have the content of standards and policies. And then we also have the implementation in terms of training and capacity building. As regards to process, one good practice is to ensure that the team who are the stakeholders who develop standards are diverse. On the one side, or especially as regards ensuring women are represented as well as men, but also other levels of diversity. For example, if we talk about international standards, geographical representation, but this is actually also true for national standards. Ensuring that representatives of women's business groups are represented or consulted in the process. In terms of the implementation, in terms of the substance or the content of the standards, this is also a very key issue for covering gender dimensions, because a gender-blind standard very much impacts mostly women in a negative way. The most famous examples are those that have a health or physical aspect. For example, the automotive sector, for years and decades, crash test dummies were based on male bodies and not on male and female bodies. And for example, a Canadian study of 2019 even indicated that women, due to that, are 73% more likely than men to be killed in a car accident. This has been addressed in the meantime by most of the automotive firms, but it still constitutes the main challenge. And the same applies to protective equipment, for example, goggles or full body suits. They are very often based on the size and characteristics of male individuals. A good practice, for example, for quality infrastructure standards at the international scale this time are the voluntary guidelines for securing sustainable small-scale fisheries in the context of food security and poverty eradication, the so-called SSF guidelines. They have even a specific chapter on gender equality and women's empowerment, where they also highlight the importance to assure women tenure rights, for example, to fishery resources, or suggest market facility improvements, etc. And then when it comes to training and capacity building, so basically ensuring that standards and guidelines are abided to, it is very important to also understand gender dimensions as the smart thing to do, so as to enhance effectiveness of any support activities. For example, it was previously alluded by Rebecca that there are different value chains that are dominated by different genders, but also the gender divisions of labor and tasks along value chain have very often a different predominance of men and women. For example, seaweed production in Indonesia is something that is mainly done by women. To stay with the fisheries example, offshore fishing is more done by men, etc. Yeah, but secondly, it is important to also provide specific support to women-led MSMEs in the value chain, if and as needed, but very often it is needed because we have heard it's only 15% of women ownerships among MSMEs. And also the larger the MSME is, the lower the ratio of women. And especially in value chains that are male dominated and which are actually also mostly the more profitable ones, it's important to include to specifically support women in these sectors. I think that I already mentioned. And how do we do that at UNIDO? So as mentioned, it's UNIDO's vision that women and men equally lead and participate and benefit from industrial development, and which is stipulated in the gender strategy and also the MTTF. And therefore, the gender office is reviewing all the projects on trade capacity building and private sector development, but also other projects as regards their impact on gender. And all projects are required to do a gender analysis and reflect the findings in the project. And also disaggregate any data by sex or gender, both at the firm level, so women-led firms and men-led firms, but also for individual beneficiaries. And I'm actually happy to report that of the UNIDO project portfolio, more than 95% of the ongoing projects have some contribution to gender equality, and those that are not are mostly the old ones. And only last year, more than 46% of projects that were approved last year significantly contribute to gender equality or have even gender equality as the main objective. So I think this is a good result that we can and look forward to continuing. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you for this positive news that we are going on the right direction, at least as an organization. And thank you for illustrating, yes, how UNIDO sees the gender responsive standard development. I think you touched upon a few points that are of extreme importance when developing and when promoting standards. For sure, the systematical inclusion is something that should be cross-cutting, and that we have seen with the examples that you quoted are extremely important to see things from another angle and to consider the role of women and consider the impact of these standards on women. And the crash test cars dummies that you quoted is probably the one that we always quote to show that there are women driving cars and there are women sitting in front in the cars. So it's important to really cover both sides of the moon. And then you highlighted an aspect that was already highlighted by Nino, which is this strengthening the capacity of people to really think differently and then to develop standards that are different and that can have a different impact. And I think these are the main aspects that you highlighted and that will ensure that the gender dimension is taken into consideration and will ensure that there are equal opportunities for women empowerment. So thank you again, Carmen. And then let's now travel to Peru, where I have the pleasure to introduce you to Ricardo Paredes, who is the Chief Technical Advisor in Lima, in Peru for GQSP. Hi, Ricardo, and welcome to you. You are the first and only man in the panel. For once, we have men are the minority in a panel, in a webinar. Maybe it's already a good sign that things are changing, at least in GQSP. But jokes apart, the question for you is linked to the second poll that we had at the very beginning of the session, where we have seen that the share of female-owned firms in Latin America and the Caribbean is 5 points above the global average. And this is a very good result. And as you have seen, nobody guessed that from our audience. Although we know that women-run firms continue to face significant challenges when it comes to participating in global trade. So I would like to hear your views on how can the strengthening of the QI system also support the breaking down of gender-specific barriers to trade and to exports, and specifically in sectors like the coffee and cocoa, on which the GQSP Peru is currently focusing on. Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you very much, Eve, and hello to you and to everybody, to my colleagues and all the audience. I'm very happy to be here with you, sharing these thoughts about this very important issue. The numbers that we saw in the poll and also in the study are very revealing, and I think they represent the reality, at least as we can see in Peru and specifically in the cocoa and value chains. For that, to give a more based opinion, I would like to explain you a little more, or to put you in context of these value chains. In the case of Peru, in the case of cocoa and coffee, they are not the most representative entrepreneur or business organizations are not firms, no, with boards and managers and so on, and with clients and providers. The most relevant or most representative organizations are these small, generally SMEs called cooperatives. No, there are these organizations that their members are the small producers. Some of them have dozens or hundreds or thousands of small producers, and they have a very productive relationship among each other. From one side, the cooperatives provide them with training, technical assistance, sometimes equipment, sometimes field supervision, no, among other activities. And the small producers sell their crops to them, to the cooperatives, because they have contracts, and also that they are part of the board and all the administrative bodies, at a price based mainly in the quality of their cocoa and coffee, and also based on its compliance with the standards. For example, organic standards or international standards like rainforest, fair trade, among others. No, and of course the cooperatives are in charge of the export and the commercialization of these products. As we in a very specific region in Peru, it's the region that produces the most of cocoa and coffee in Peru. But we can see that in both instances, both producers, small producers and cooperatives, the participation of women in the field, in the technical areas and in management is increasing, but the leadership still is very low compared with men. The gap is evident, no? It's increasing, the participation, but it's still low relative to men. In our project, we are providing support to cooperatives, including a few of them where the majority of members and women are women and are led by women. Our experience is that they are very serious one, they are very formal one, and they are very innovative one. At least in the group that we are working with, they have the most cooperation, and they really have in their core values the innovation and improvement of quality of one of their characteristics. From our point of view, to break down the trade and export barriers to these cooperatives in general, including the gender-specific ones, and let them or help them to profit from the developed markets, they have to be each time more competitive. But in which side, or on which sense? More competitive to comply with the international and importers' requirements to access their markets, and then to obtain higher prices because of their higher quality products, and also with the better compliance of their standards. No, precisely both objectives can be achieved with the strengthening of the quality infrastructure. For example, the generation, diffusion, and training of knowledge in terms of better practices for seeding, better practices for harvest processing, like fermenting or drying, the better practices for evaluating the quality to improve the coffee and quality, all of this through domestic technical standards or international standard, but based on Peruvian reality. No? Also, the international accreditation of more labs in the Peruvian coffee and cocoa region in essays relevant to them, relevant to coffee and cocoa, like cadmium, like pesticides, among others. But more importantly, accredited labs closer to the producer. And so then they are cheaper to access, no, especially for cooperatives that already face important challenges, no, like the ones led by women. And also, it's very important, for example, the improvement of their capabilities to maintain better and more trustworthy measurements, because this capacity helps them to improve their processes, improve their quality of the coffee and cocoa, and also obtain better prices and access to more markets. No, in the UKSP Peru, we, as part of as our mandate and also as the structure of our activities, we organize these activities, and also we're very happy that in the activities we have so far, we have a very good participation and of women in our all of our events, our trainings, and also the support of the beneficiaries that we are developing in these years. Thank you, Bebe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricardo, for sharing your views and illustrating us how investing in quality infrastructure and investing in supporting value chains like cocoa or coffee can trigger a positive effect also on women and on their capability and their possibility both to access the resources and to be more competitive in the national and international market. And eventually we hope that this will also translate into a better leadership. So the possibility for women also to access, to raise their voice and to be more hearable in the international market. And I think you touched upon two important points besides the education and the reinforcement of the technical capacities of these cooperatives and of these SMEs and women. And these are the importance that technical standards can have to enhance the quality of the local products and then enhance the price of this product, because of course a product that has a higher quality can be sold at a higher price, and this triggers down to the women and to the communities where the economic effect can have a very important social impact also on the community. And the other part is the role also of the accreditation and of the metrology. You were talking about measurement and you were talking about accreditation, and we tend always to see this as very technical fields, without realizing that for laboratories to be accredited is, of course, technical, is very specific, but then this can have a positive impact on the small producers, on the SMEs and on the cooperatives, because this allows them to be more competitive in the international market. So thank you for this insight on the Peruvian cocoa and coffee value chains, Ricardo. And then within the GQSP program, there is another country that is currently working on strengthening the cocoa quality infrastructure related services. And we then moved to Ghana, where I have the pleasure to discuss with Dr. Simone Heberly, who is the Deputy Head of Mission and Head of Cooperation of the Embassy of Switzerland for Ghana, Togo, and Benin. So pure West Africa. A double welcome for you, Simone, and a big thank you, as you just took over the post in Ghana and agreed to speak on behalf of SECO in this important webinar today. As highlighted by Rebecca at the very beginning of the webinar, UNIDO and SECO have been working hand in hand over the past years to ensure that better quality infrastructure related services are provided to value chains of countries where the GQSP is implemented. Recognizing gender equality as a universal right and a prerequisite to effectively fight poverty and promote sustainable inclusive growth, SECO sets gender equality high on its agenda, and all its projects are systematically analyzed for their potential to advance gender equality. What do you think is the main contribution of global programs like the GQSP to the safe and non-discriminatory delivery of national QI-related services? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Eve. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for having me here. I think I should take this opportunity to thank UNIDO for the decades, actually, of partnership we have enjoyed on an institutional level. We have been on a joint journey globally and then also in the countries, and we have heard from some. And I'm actually happy to represent the Ghana perspective today, where the program has been active. And I think I will just try to reply in examples, because it's the most tangible and most concrete, and you will see how they relate back to what the previous speakers have said. And, you know, it's like the recurring topic I think we have heard throughout. It started with Nino, it was picked up by others, is really, there's one building block you cannot do without, and that's training and capacity building. So in our programs, and we do that together, right, and we do it for a long time and with a lot of expertise. Of course, you need to have the country specific context, and you need to know for each country what is adequate and what will work there. But without training, I'm afraid we can do as much. We can set up any type of infrastructure. It's just not going to work. And we have beautiful examples in Ghana here how it worked. And it's a sad truth that you have to make an extra effort to get women into trainings. It's not just that you don't have obstacles, right? You need to mobilize, and you need to get them, including the young graduates. And we had such trainings here, for instance, for the national food safety experts, so that they would be in a position to guide the SMEs in implementation of the food safety standards and systems. And such a training here in Ghana did specifically give equal access to women. And one of them reported back to us that really for her, it was a fantastic training opportunity. And not only that, she actually got employed right after the training, and not by the state, which is also good, but you know, she got employed by a multinational company and is now their food safety officer. And she said it in one phrase: this is gender equality, right? So it's very simple, and I think it illustrates well what has been said by the others. So this is this bottom-up approach that we need to have. It's a repetitive exercise, as we know. So with training, you have to start all over again to build the new cohorts, to build the new experts, to reflect well, changes in standards that are also there. And then as a second building block, of course, you want to have the systemic approach as well, because otherwise you will probably not see very much of effective use of the means that we, and we are a donor in this, that we put as a donor, right? So when it's up, you work with standards, and well, the G in your program is not a coincidence. They want to be global. They want to support well, the world trade eventually, and so many countries currently are still missing out on joining and enjoying the global trade, and standards is just, I think, one of the best ways to get there. Now, I will not speak on cocoa or coffee. I'll bring in the third value chain. Let me speak about palm oil, which has a bad reputation in the West, I think, but it's something that we try to work on, because we do believe that there is also a responsible way of doing palm oil production. And you may know from East Asia that responsible palm oil standards have been developed, and it was a big success that under this program here, the same standard could be rolled out for Ghana. And then, of course, you need to train farmers on how to comply with that standard and how to obtain, also as a group. So it resonates a bit what Ricardo has said about the cooperatives, how as a group you receive that RSPO standard. And then some of the farmers were women, obviously, not too many, I'm afraid. I think we can become better there. So 15 out of 36, but it's a start. It's around this 20% that we have seen in the first poll, right? And then they were interviewed. So what has it done for you, joining this standard, complying as a farmer to this standard? And of course, you can easily imagine it's the premium collected that has increased their income. And we know that for many years now, World Bank studies and other studies have underlined it, that women, they spend differently. They tend to invest in the education of the children, in the food safety, in the health. And this has exactly happened in the case of these women who had a higher revenue thanks to being part of this now certified group of farmers. And then for me, the question of this systemic approach also, of course, then moves up the value chain. So now I've spoken about farmers, but you also have the processes, right? So you move to the meso level, and it was evoked that we should work on 3 levels, really, including the macro, which I will not mention now in my little expose, but at least the meso I really would like to mention also. That when you do work within the palm oil mills, right, you have to make sure that women move up the value chains, not just be the farmer and collect the nuts, right, but really also when it comes to value addition, they should also move along with the value chain up. One of the supported oil mills here in Ghana that was, supported to obtain the RSPO SCC stamp certification, the lead, so the RSPO team leader was picked, and it was on purpose, it was a woman. And I think that did not just build her capacity really very much, but it's also really an inspiration. And don't forget, still nowadays, in so many places, including my own country, women don't have role models. So if we make sure that women can move up the value chain along our projects, then we also inspire younger ones to aspire and move to segments where the value addition and also the income possibilities are higher. So this was a little journey through some selected results in Ghana. Thanks for having me once more. Back to you, Ebe.
Thank you, Simone, and thank you for these very concrete examples also. And I also have the pleasure to work in Ghana on the 2 projects that UNIDO implements there are related to quality, the GQSP and the West Africa Competitiveness Program for Ghana. And I must say that Ghana is always a very good example for gender equality, because we always have a very good participation of women in all levels. So at the very micro level with the producers and processors, at the support institution level with laboratories or with companies and exporters, and also at the macro level with the Ghana Standards Authority, for example. Most of the head, for example, of the standard development unit is a woman. And so it's always a pleasure to see the results that this role model, these women trigger down in the value chain and in their own country. So I'm sure that you will enjoy your work in Ghana for this. And then you raised a very important aspect, which is also more and more important for UNIDO, is the responsible and sustainable standards. Rebecca mentioned it at the very beginning. Standards are not there only to ensure that the product is fit for purpose, but that is sustainably fit for purpose, and that the impact on the environment, on the society, and on the planet in general is good. So this aspect is something in which we are more and more working, and we are more and more introducing in all our projects. And the examples you quoted about the palm oil producers and palm oil mills, I think is a very important one and very representative one, because it's only through responsible standards that we can also change a little bit the vision that we have on the value chain. There are so many communities and so many people working on oil palm that we cannot simply say, okay, we don't buy oil palm anymore, and these communities will not have an income anymore. So we need to try to produce this in a sustainable manner, and standards can play a role for this. So thank you for sharing SECO's view and your view on Ghana and how to ensure gender equality and empowerment of women in value chains. Before we wrap up, I would like to take advantage of your experience of all the panelists and the lessons learned from the implementation of this Global Quality and Standard Program Phase 1. And since you all come from different countries and see the standards and quality from different angles, I would like to ask you to share with us very briefly which are, in your opinion, the 3 key areas for advancing gender equality and the empowerment of women through global trade. So if you had to select 3 target areas, I suppose one will be training for all, because this has already been raised quite a bit in the previous round of questions. But if you had to select 3 key areas for advancing gender equality and empowerment of women through global trade, can you tell me which these would be, and just very, very briefly to give some food for thoughts for the weekend to our participants. So I would give the floor first to Nino. Please, Nino.
Okay, you are right. Thank you. You are right. First would be education, training, and skill development, of course. The second could be employment, I think. And the third could be more decision-making, women in governmental organizations. And thanks to QQSP project in Georgia, you know that we have created and strengthened Georgian Laboratory Association. And I can say that about 95% of employees are women. And this association is like a platform between the stakeholders of laboratories in the country, as private sector, governmental organizations. And I hope very much that in the future, our association and the sectorial groups where we have women will have a great influence of government policy makers in the direction of laboratories in Georgia and the improvement of laboratory services in Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Nino. Thank you very much. Carmen, what would you say?
There's a lot to do, but so maybe let me take the more overarching approach, looking at saying the micro, the meso, and the macro level, or the normative level, the institutional level, and the women entrepreneur support level. So at the normative level, I think it would be very important to address any measures, tariff or non-tariff, that are either gender blind or that have also a disproportionately negative impact on women dominated industries. For example, small scale cross-border trading is more done by women, and these kind of aspects would also need to be taken into consideration as only one example. And then also we do need on the meso level the institutions and the intermediaries, also at the private sector level, to be trained or to be further sensitized on the gender equality aspect. On the one side, we have the regulators and the inspectors, but on the other side, we also have the intermediary firms. And for example, one possibility is to encourage them to ensure that they have gender equality or some aspects or some women's representation in their supply chain. The women's economic empowerment principles in this regard actually provide a very good guidance. And then when we are going down at the micro level, supporting women entrepreneurs, there I think it was also partly mentioned. One thing is access to finance, and this maybe also replies, or I'm trying to briefly reply to the question that was put in the chat. The reason why access to finance is one, or if not the main challenge and impediment for women entrepreneurs is because of structural discrimination and structural and discriminatory gender norms as regards access to finance in terms of collateral that is more missing for women than for men, but also as regards investor buyers, etc. And that combined with the capacity building that we have been hearing very often, and also what was also mentioned, networking and mentoring, women role models, but also networking in terms of, for example, ensuring women's high or equitable participation in trade fairs, etc. So I'll keep it at that.
Thank you, Carmen. I will give the floor now to Simone first, and let the only man of the panel to give us the answer as last. Simone, over to you.
Yes, difficult to add anything, new and innovative to what Carmen has said, because I just couldn't agree more with what she has said. And I wanted to bring, the point on access to finance, but let's just say, equal opportunities really, and that spans everything, right? That is access to information also. Maybe that's something that wasn't really said yet. And something I have witnessed is really the networking aspect. Like you try to encourage women to go into export. They say, we don't know how to do it. We don't know anyone. We're a little bit afraid. So that probably links with the encouragement, right? That you really tell them that it can be done. But really a lack of network, I think, is a major stumbling block, together with all these limited access to funds, information, opportunities. And something that will maybe sound a little bit funny, but it's something we often forget. Women simply have less time because they're tangled up in care work. And I think it's true for all of us, especially if we're mothers. And some of those women, I remember from the Caucasus, also, where I work, they said, yes, your ideas is really great, but it means I can only sleep until 2 a.m. So, yeah, because she had to do it before the family would wake up. So that's also reality. And we sometimes think too technical, but we need to add the human dimension as well. And that just not to forget how disproportionately entangled women's lives are, especially if they have families. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. And now let's hear Ricardo, your point of view.
Thank you very much. To be more interesting, I have to base my answer on the experience of the GQSP Peru and working with cocoa and coffee cooperatives. I was thinking really about other key areas besides training, but I think I got activities, very specific activities I think that we should follow in the project or in the other phases that we could have. for example, training. No, training of besides the standards, besides the processing, we already done some training to have more physical evaluators and tasters on the field. No, and it's because it's a key actor in the quality infrastructure system for the cooperatives in the San Martin region of Peru, and also are very few capable professionals on that. And it was really surprising that in our courses, almost 50% of the people were women. No, and also very capable, very good ones in their work. So I think that this is a very important area to continue developing, because these professionals not only create the coffee and cocoa, but also they should have the capabilities to assess the producer and recommend them better practices to improve the quality. No, it's not just grading, but it's also giving that assessment. Another group of activities that should be follow is in the project we began working with third-party essay laboratories, but also all the cooperatives in of coffee and cocoa in Peru, and I suppose also in other countries, in other crops, they have a small place called laboratory, no, where they make the assessments, they do the physical exam, there's the organoleptic exams and so on, the tasting, no? But there are very huge gaps between one of the very big and exporting cooperative compared with a very small one, no? And also this is also a key element in any quality infrastructure, but on the field, no? So you also have to work on that. And finally, even though for some industries or businesses, the kind of metrology is very important and is everybody very aware of that. In the case of cocoa and coffee in Peru, we've just beginning with some awareness activities on that, and it's huge. The most, at least the biggest cooperatives in San Martin, they have equipment, they have a lot of, they try to be like, to use the most innovative ones, but they don't realize at all the importance of the calibration, the traceability, no, and all these practices, and they really don't know if their measurements are correct or not. No? So all these things that, as I said in my first answer, no, they help the cooperatives and the small producers to have better products, to tackle any barrier for trading, and also to obtain better prices for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Very, very useful to have concrete examples always. And I think with this, we have reached the end of the time allocated for the webinar. And I would like to thank you all for this insightful discussion and for all the details and the views that you have provided from Georgia, from Vienna, from Peru, and from Ghana. And it was a pleasure to be with you. I think we all learned a lot and we all have food for thought. And I pass it on to Rebecca to close and to wish her good work for the next part of GQSP. There is a lot to do, as Carmen said. There is still a lot to do, and but I think we have clear views on where to invest our time and resources. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Eve. So yeah, I would like also to express my sincerest appreciation to all our panelists for this very interesting and reflective discussion. As Eve mentioned, I think it gave us a lot of food for thought, particularly in regard to those areas of opportunity that exist to improve gender equality through global trade. Thank you also to our audience today. If you want to read more about the topic, I remind you that we just launched the publication Advancing Gender Equality Through Global Trade, and that the document is available both in English and in Spanish on our knowledge hub, hub.unido.org. So once again, happy World Standards Day to all of you, and I wish you a very nice weekend ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you.
Bye.